and you can have fish in this. Ready? Okay. Good morning, everyone. This is the Compensation Committee meeting for March 25th. Today we have Johansson Group to give us a report on the compensation study that the court asked to have done. And so, Mr. Blair Johansson, you're here this morning, you and Betty Jo, and we have with us Rick Sparks, our treasurer, Susan. Susan. There's Susan there. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was looking for you. Mr. Hewitt, Mr. Mitchell, Brian Brewer. We have also Squire Sebastian, and I don't see Squire Muller. Is he on? Yes. There he is. Okay. Yes. Squire Muller's on as part of the committee. So the committee is made up of myself, Squire Muller, and Squire Sebastian. So we call this committee meeting to order. Thank you, Mr. Johansson, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, County Judge. Sure appreciate the opportunity to present today. And I believe I need to share screen. And then are you able to see the first slide?
Yes, sir.
Or with the job description, job evaluation, compensation study, are you able to see that slide?
Yes, sir. You're good to go.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you. So County Judge and Squires and elected officials, hey, Joe, folks, it's a great opportunity to visit with you and work with you on the project, and just appreciate your hospitality and your willingness to be diligent on working with us on your job descriptions and the information that we gathered to complete the study. So just want to start off by telling you thanks for the opportunity to meet with y'all personally and also on a virtual basis.
Mr. Johansson, if you don't mind, I'm going to need to apologize because I'm sitting there so used to Zoom. I introduced all the Zoom, but forgot to introduce the people that are sitting here in this room. So I apologize. Let me say that we have Jay Urbana, Rich Mazzacone, and Laurie here to represent the jail. Mr. Hancock here for the clerk's office, Canberra, Herod, and Betty Jo and Andrew here. So I apologize. I apologize to you all for not saying that you were here.
That's okay.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Judge. And again, it's just a pleasure to work with y'all and take you through some pretty high level slides about the process that we went through with the county to complete the project. And I'll just go ahead and go on to the next slide. So when we work with these types of projects, there's usually some objectives that we're trying to accomplish. Typically, we're trying to make sure that the county offers fair, equitable pay for its employees. And that's an internal evaluation of how pay's being paid out to the employees for their respective jobs, as well as going to the market to make sure that we're competitive with the marketplace so that you're able to recruit and retain employees. And then also to make sure that your compensation structure and process is aligned with the goals for the county. In addition, you kind of have to strike a balance between how much can we afford to pay the employees and at the same time be mindful of the other resources that we have to run the county operation. And then to maintain a system that is flexible and allows you to be able to, as the organization changed, because you're able to change jobs or create new jobs that are needed to accomplish the work for the county. And then lastly, again, making sure that you're able to have a system that attracts talented employees into the organization and also helps to retain them. The study includes 3 phases. The first phase was internal, working with the job descriptions and job ratings. We were able to work with the elected officials on what turned out to be 108 position descriptions, which we were able to load into our compensation system and to work with the elected officials to make sure that the job descriptions were current and to make sure that that was part of the project, to be able to make sure that all the jobs were complete, that they were comprehensive, and they're also compliant with employment law. And then we also utilized our rating system, a 15-factor rating system that we've been utilizing since 1985 with cities, counties, utilities, public and private entities for quite a few years now, and using that as a basis to be able to evaluate each position within the county. The 15 factors that are associated with the rating system are noted on this slide, where we have knowledge and skill requirements, and there's 6 factors. Then 4 factors in the area of responsibilities. So we're looking at supervision, funds, equipment, and property, accuracy, and accountability for driving end results. And then internal, external communication. What kind of communication does the job have to have externally with clientele? And then what type of communication internally? How high up in the organization do I communicate within the organization to have decisions made? And then efforts, machine and computer operations, working conditions, and physical demands. The second phase goes external, and this is where we're taking your internal pay average by title and comparing that against the market. And the market includes a mix of counties and cities that provided data on their actual pay by job title. So you'll see on this particular slide that we had Scott, Shelby, Woodford counties, and then we had the city of Frankfort, city of Georgetown, Henderson, Nicholasville, Richmond, Shelby, Frankfort Plant Board, and then we had 2 other sources that we utilized to bring in the private sector, private and public sector, and that's the Department of Labor for the greater Lexington, Frankfort regional area, and then comp analysts for the same regional area. But that particular study is indexed to the Frankfort zip code. So it's really targeting pay within the Frankfort area. In this particular part of the study, we compared 91 different job titles and their respective pay with the market. Based on the study, here's the variance to market by the elected office and then also the fire department uniform jobs. So with the attorney office being 4% behind market, coroner's office 13% behind market, county clerk's office 3.6% behind market, county judge's office 5% behind market, the jailer office 6.7%, the sheriff's office 12.7%, and then the fire uniform jobs 9.8% behind market. And again, this is comparing your internal actual pay by job title compared to the information provided by the cities, counties, and then the data that we picked up by the Department of Labor and comp analysts to determine how are you doing in comparison to the market pay. And then
Mr. Johansson, if you don't mind, let me ask you a question because I think it's very pertinent to what you just said. Did those stats that you just gave, market pay, study variance, include our 5% raise that the employees got in January?
Yes, it does. So we were actually looking at actual to actual this year. And so when we completed the study, you had already allocated the 5% adjustment. So I think that was really a positive move because we were probably seeing approximately 5% higher negative variance if you hadn't gone ahead and that adjustment.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Okay.
May I ask a question, Judge, since you asked a question?
Of course. Asking me or asking Johansson?
No, it's for Mr. Johansson. Mr. Johansson, thank you very much for being part of this meeting today. I did hear you mention just before the judge asked you a question about pay by job title compared to market pay. Did you also factor in, rather than, was it specifically by job title, or did you look at job duties under the job title?
Okay, great question, Squire Sebastian. So when we go to the market, we actually have a profile. So we have beyond title, we go a little bit deeper. We go into a purpose statement, some duties. We go into education and experience requirements, any certifications and licensure. And we have that information in a profile statement. So then the individuals that are responding to the study can go beyond titles. So then that way we're dropping into a little bit more detail, and it creates a better match to the market.
And you indicated purpose statement, duties.
Yes, education, experience, and licensure and certifications. So we have a profile, what we call a profile statement by each title.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Good question. All right, so then once we go internal, external, and we bring it all together, what we call phase 3 is compensation administration. And what we're doing in the third phase is we're bringing in the employee information, your title, pay information into a database, and we're comparing that against the market. This represents 231 employees' data that came into the system. And we shared the market pay study variances with the elected officials so that they could see by title how they're doing compared to the market. And then part of this process is to finalize bringing it all together. So the job descriptions completed, job evaluation, compensation study, all that being brought together, which ends up being a variance study for the elected officials. And then for the county judge, it represents building a proposed pay structure, which we'll cover here in just a minute. And today's the opportunity for us to be able to bring this all together and provide the information to the compensation committee. So when we put all this together, based on the internal job valuing and the market pay for the county judge's office, we have on this slide a proposed pay structure that represents 52 positions, not including the fire uniform jobs. And on this particular pay schedule that we're proposing, we start at grade 101 at $11.33 minimum, and we go all the way up to grade 121 and a range structure for each of the grades, representing the 52 positions within the county judge's office. On this particular slide, what we're recommending based on the market study is that you start your part-time and seasonal employees pay at a minimum of $10 per hour. And that excludes your permanent part-time positions that would fall into the structure on this chart. So for your part-time and seasonal, at least $10 per hour minimum. And then the proposed pay structure for your full-time employees, depending on where they fall within the grade level. So what does that look like when we actually have the positions, position titles and the pay structure? So working with the deputy county judge executive position at the top of the chart. So Franklin County grade 121, we have a point range structure where that position falls within that grade range. And we have a minimum, midpoint, maximum, and then the point value, 1,810 points for the deputy county judge executive. And then this creates the structure of doing the internal job valuing, having a pay structure that's been adjusted to match the variance to market. And the combination of the two creates the proposed structure for the positions that are in the county judge's office. So in this particular chart, you can see that we have several grades and several positions within the grade structure. And then on the second page, we end out at the grade Franklin County 101, FC 101, for the golf cart maintenance worker at $11.33. So what we're recommending for your full-time position at the lowest grade level, $11.33, up to a max of $16.38. And then what this does is it creates a pay structure that allows the county judge and Betty Jo and HR to be able to manage a structure on a going forward basis that's competitive to the market, and then internally creates an objective way to place the positions.
Mr. Johansson, can I ask a question, please? It's
Yes.
Jeff Hancock, County Clerk.
Yes.
Only job evaluations you have on here at this point are from the county judge's office. Am I missing that?
No, not at all. No, so the other elected officials manage their structures. And so what we did with them was to provide a variance to market so that they can continue to manage their pay structures as opposed to a developed structure. I think the other elected officials manage their pay and their budgets.
Okay, I understand that. I'm just trying to figure out how we got that percentage difference then. If we didn't put it in the same structure.
I can
Well,
clarify
so
that.
for the county judge, what we're using is the 5%. So back at slide right here with the county judge at 5%, we use the 5% value to help build the structure here.
Mr. Johansson, what he's asking is he wanted to know how you got that number. There was another Excel spreadsheet where you did the
Elected officials.
elected officials.
Jobs. So
Will you
can
explain that
Can
process?
you get that can you make that available to the elected officials?
Say it again, I'm sorry.
Okay, Betty said you had a secondary sheet that gave you where you got the information of their.
Yes.
theirs.
Yeah, so what that sheet represents is the variance to market by job title. And so what that's doing is looking at the market variance. We use the cumulative variance of 5% for the county judge's office to help build this structure to make it competitive with the marketplace. So that's the external part of the study, and that's bringing it all together for this particular table, so that this table, the midpoint on this table would represent a market rate, the midpoint on the table.
Mr. Johansson, this is Betty Jo. I sent that out to elected officials on an Excel spreadsheet, so I
Right.
believe you have that, Jeff, along with Jake. Did you all get that
Right.
copy also? Okay, I did send that Excel spreadsheet out to the elected officials, but
Right.
I will be happy to resend it out again.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
remember seeing it, but I get 120 emails a day.
Oh, you bet. Yeah, so it gives you really some good information by title compared to the market. So definitely want to use that as a resource for your office.
Thank you.
But what you're giving here is just the variance overall, the overall variance, and not by
Yeah.
position, but overall variance.
That's correct. So this is the rolled up overall variance based on the titles for the elected officials office. And then behind this is a spreadsheet by title that the elected officials can look at how they're doing against each title.
May I ask another question? I don't, if everybody can see I'm not sure how the visualization of the meeting is downtown, if you can see our hands or not. It sounds like material was sent out to, the only material I have received is this slide presentation. Sounds like our HR director shared some other information via email. Can all of the email in regard to this study be sent to us, just so we have a sense of what has been shared and what has been viewed? I don't have a sense of that at all.
Well, that really doesn't pertain to us. It pertains to the other elected officials, but sure, we can send it to you. But that was really for the other, the county clerk, the attorneys. It was not really pertinent to us, but that's fine.
But it does have a bearing on the overall county budget. And of course, the treasurer can speak to it in a more elaborate fashion than I can. However, we front a lot of not only the pay for the salaries, but also the benefit structure, and certainly what we're talking about today has bearing on that. So it's just helpful to understand the process in the round rather than one small element of the process. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Johansson, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I believe Rick Sparks has a question.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
If I may, Judge, and I also, on behalf of all of us in the outlying areas, also appreciate everything that the county does to keep our system working. Mr. Johansson, I've only got 3 questions, and I did receive my report from Betty Jo, and I'm looking at it. I'm looking at all the files here, and I had a couple of questions regarding the phrase you keep saying about market study. What do I understand that the market in question that was done, and I'm only referring to the county attorney's office, I would not question other people, was that based on other county offices, based on in other county officials, other areas nearby, or what?
Yes, so on slide 6, where we have Scott County, Shelby, Woodford, we had several cities: Frankfurt, Georgetown, Henderson, Nicholasville, Richmond, Shelbyville, and then we picked up some public-private data out of the Department of Labor as well as comp analyst.
Okay, that's what I'm wondering, and I don't mean to compete with other people, but I also have to compete with private industries, other members of the local bar here, state, et cetera.
Right.
Were those brought into the to this classification that you provided me, other areas?
Yes, so the Department of Labor for Lexington, Frankfurt area, that's the culmination of both public and private entities that pay taxes and report their what their employees are paid to the government. And so we tap the Department of Labor study by title, and that's a really excellent resource because it's got all of your employers, both public and private entities, in that study. And then the comp analyst is a little bit more weighted towards private sector than public sector because they're pulling a lot of organizational data for their database. So that would represent a little bit mixture of your private sector, and then the others are cities and counties.
And this Frankfurt, I would argue that Frankfurt's a little unique than even maybe those other counties. Were these comparisons made relative to state government employee positions as well, not only from my office, but for the other positions that you're describing?
Yeah, so from a state perspective, that data would show up in the Department of Labor data because it does include state positions. Any employer that pays labor is in the Department of Labor study. For the cities and counties, it would not have state data.
But relative to, and I'll go back to mine, relative to my office's position, did you include or did you address it relative to a state employee legal services type position?
No, we do not have specific state data where we have a column of data for state employees.
Okay, so my question, so those, you're basically comparing county agencies to other county agencies in the state, not relative to the Commonwealth of Kentucky's department.
Right. The only way that we'd pick up a little bit of state data would be in the Department of Labor column.
Okay, because I know all the people that is listed on here could switch tomorrow and go to the state and make a boatload money than we get from here on the state side. Because I know those people, I know what they do, and I know where they're working. And it seems to be a little inconsistent with what I understand to be the state salary versus equivalent at the county, on the county attorney side. So you're to answer it, you're not using state data, that is Commonwealth of Kentucky data.
We don't have a column specifically.
Okay, that's what I was wanting to know.
Right.
Whether when we talk market factors, that also includes the Commonwealth as well as the other departments.
Yeah, the only way where that would show up is in the Department of Labor data.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you all.
Mm-hmm.
He did. Okay, Mr. Johansson, a bit of clarification. when you called Scott County, Woodford County, any of the counties, did you ask them specifically about positions in the county attorney's office, positions of the jail, positions in the county clerk's office?
Yeah, so we had all the positions and all the elected officials offices in our profiles. And we gave those to the counties and cities for them to respond wherever they had a match.
Okay, yeah, so that's a fair comparison.
Well, I kind of want to rebuttal on what Rick has said. In Franklin County, it's a little bit harder because we compete with state government, which hires 40,000 people annually, not just the same thing that Scott, Woodford, and I guess the same statement can be made. I would hope that we looked into longevity because Rick has several employees and I have several employees that have been here 27, 28, 29 years with the county. So that may have affected the overall numbers in the percentage base.
Could have, yeah.
And that was what Jeff just brought out is exactly the point that I'm always raising when we're talking about longevity. You can talk about what Scott County's making on X number of dollars that, I don't know, pick a position, but then they can flip around and go over for the state transportation, for example, or they can be an engineer, or they can be a lawyer, or they can be a paralegal, et cetera. And they've got several different positions here in Franklin County that might not be available in those other related districts. So I think Franklin County is very much unique as a special case to compare it uniformly across the other related community or related counties nearby.
This is Betty Jo. I have a statement to make. We had several meetings with Mr. Johansson. Please correct me if I'm wrong. We had several meetings with, I wasn't part of most of elected officials meeting, but I was part of every single other department of gathering this data, and the state was never mentioned to Mr. Johansson, not unless I'm corrected, to do that market. So Mr. Johansson, can you speak on behalf of that? Because I went back through all my notes and the state was never mentioned for you to look at their salaries, because their salaries is all over the board and they can increase. And so that's one reason he didn't include the state, is my understanding.
Well, he did.
Oh, and let me say this. I was not criticizing the mechanism. I just wanted to know what the paradigms were that were involved in. I understand exactly maybe why or why not, but I just wanted to know where we were at.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Johansson, if you would. Thanks, Rick and Jeff. Thank you all for your comments.
Yes, thanks, County Judge. So the recommendations from the study, again, today, what we're doing is providing the findings and results. And we're doing that for the compensation committee, and then next week for the board. What we're recommending is the approval of the county judge's pay grade and range structure based on the results of the study. And then as Squire Sebastian mentioned, it is important for you to have a feel for how the other elected officials are doing compared to market. And that's what we were providing for them, as a way for them to see how they're doing with their respective offices compared to the market. So then that guides some of the decision-making for the next budget cycle. And then what we recommend is that you do this process every 2 years, not the external review, but to do an external review of the market every 2 years to make sure that your structure is current. And then we have a couple of recommendations that go beyond the base pay policy. One is to develop a training incentive pay plan to supplement base pay for the county positions. And then the last two bullets are talking about some new positions and a title change. So a new golf course manager job title, and then to change the job title for the road department administrative assistant to office manager. And then the last bullet was in the area of mechanics and heavy equipment operators for the road department. to build in a mechanic 2 and a heavy equipment operator 2 based on skill and certification, so that you have the opportunity to have those positions for individuals that have a higher skill level and certification and are able to do more within that position title. So those are our recommendations. Would be happy to take on any questions.
Mr. Johansson, I'm pleased to see the training incentive. How would you implement that? How would you, what suggestions would you give us to do to implement that type of incentive?
So it's kind of the same process, internal, external. The internal is identifying the positions where the county would benefit from the training incentive pay plan. And external would be to evaluate positions out in the marketplace that have that type of structure in place, and what are they paying from an incentive standpoint. So you're guided by what the market's paying for incentive pay and the types of positions that are receiving training incentive pay.
All right, Muller?
Thank you, Judge, and thank you, Mr. Johansson, for the presentation. I have a
Yes,
question.
sir.
You know, when this started out, it was all about, for me, job descriptions and trying to identify things like that. I don't see the individual job descriptions in this study. Are those available?
Definitely will be with Betty Jo. I think there's 108. And what you'll like about it is they're consistent from the standpoint of the flow and the information that's captured. So I specifically have not sent those to her, but we'll be happy to do that because they're all ready to go.
Okay, and then another question I had, if it's okay to ask another one, Judge. What's the difference between a director, a manager, and a supervisor?
Okay, as far as the job title?
The job descriptions, yes.
Yeah, you bet. So typically, I mean, this would be in general terms because each organization tends to look at or build titles based on historically how they've worked with job titles. But the director level is typically someone who's over a department and over a particular department functional area. And then a manager would be within that operation underneath the director, and the supervisor would be underneath the manager. So 3 levels of management, typically director, department head, manager with the organization in a sub area of the department, and the supervisors working with employees directly in a functional area within the department.
Okay, is there any requirements for any of those as far as the director, manager, or supervisor that a certain number of employees have to be under them to be considered for that title?
Well, that's a good question. So normally you have smaller departments where you have less employees, but you still have a functional area. So what's nice about the rating system under factor 7 supervision, we might have a department head that has 1 to 3 employees or 3 to 7 employees. We might have a department head who has, let's say, 15 to 20 employees. Factor 7 allows us to scope the responsibility of the position based on the number of employees that that particular department head is responsible for.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Johansson, I have one more question. On
Yes.
this, Jeff Hancock, County Clerk again. On the counties that you compared us to, they're relatively similar in size. Did you ask for the total amount of employees per that department base? Like on the county clerk, did you ask how many employees they actually had to do the same amount of work for the population base?
So it's kind of a mixture. Some of the responses will provide an average value for that particular title without saying how many employees are in that title. And then we had some counties provide their actual census. So they would be able to provide us with actual employee information by title. So some situations, we actually have number of employees in the title, and some we just have an average by title.
Good question. Mr. Sparks, your hand is up, your fake hand is up. Do you
My
have a
apologies.
question?
Let me figure out how to work that. That is not something I often do. Please disregard it.
Well, it's not something we often see too, so.
Well, apologies to you all for
No
whatever I did.
problem. No problem. No problem. Okay. Will Harrod, our coroner, I saw that you've come on and I'm glad you're on. Do you have any questions, Will? We can't hear you. You're on mute.
Thank you, Judge. I do apologize. I had a case this morning. One question I had, and it may have been addressed. How did the percentages for the market study showed that we were 30% below the average? How did we come to the conclusion in the presentation that it's only 13?
Well, we can definitely look at that worksheet, because I believe the worksheet by title showed 13% based on all the titles in the coroner's office.
Okay.
You might have had one position that might have been more than that, and others that might have been closer to market, but we based it on the information for all the titles in the office.
And the information's compiled from the other counties, and that's where the percentage comes from?
It's based on all those responses that came in from the counties, cities. Of course, for the coroner's office, naturally it's going to be within the counties is where you would get your comparisons based on the nature of the work.
All right. I really appreciate the presentation, and thank you for answering my question.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay.
And Mr. Johansson, can I double back on what Coroner Harrod just said? And I'm going to ask this question again to find out the real relative overall costs. We need to know how many people and how many employees are being used in these other counties on overall budget, because if the coroner is using 3 employees and our neighboring Scott County is using 7 employees, and they're all making $13,000 a year, well, Scott County's compensation base is a whole lot more than what we're using in Franklin County. And I think we need to look at this as an overall totality based on the amount of population that is in the countering counties that you're using for the same population.
Right. And this is for pay variance. So we're looking at how you're doing by title.
Well, if we're doing more with less, that ought to be recognized as well.
Yeah, and I think that
a $22 employee and they're doing the same as 2 $15 employees, it's still an advantage of the base. If
Right.
in Franklin County, the clerk's office has 13 employees, which is what we have, and in Scott County, there's 22 employees for the same amount of population, well, we're doing a pretty good job. I mean, in the squires and in the judge's mind, that just reflects into excess fees or less money they have to spend, one of the two.
right.
So I think it needs to be by totality. If the coroner's got 3 people doing the job of 6, we either need to pay them as double the amount, or we need to figure out how to get him more employees.
But you're looking at it from the standpoint of 6 compared to 12, but the average of the pay of the 12 compared to the average of the pay for 6. Is that correct?
Yeah. So that's correct. So what we're looking at is how you're doing overall pay average, not the total budget, just the pay average.
So that could apply in our office as well.
Yes, I agree.
Absolutely applies to our office.
Right.
I think it applies to all.
Yeah,
I
it
do
applies
too.
to all
Yes.
all the
I'm not-
county.
No, I agree.
Yes.
I just want to, the 13% is not a good percentage unless we're actually talking budget to budget. a percentage, you're giving a percentage based on the people that we have in there working the jobs with maybe 27 or 30 years experience. So the percentage base, even though it's showing that there were 3%, 6% or 13% down, I mean, in relatively county to county, we could be 15 to 20% if we have half as many people doing the same amount of jobs.
Yes, good point.
Mr. Johansson, one of the things that we need to look at from the county judge's office, particularly because this is budget time. Right off the top of my head, when I look at this down 5%, and from mine and the county attorney's office is down 4, the coroner's office is down 13, and jailer, they're all right now, as well as fire, all part of this budget. So what is your suggestion? And I'll give a thought to it and make a statement, but what is your suggestion as how we phase this in? And I in particular think phasing should come in immediately in the budget with those that are not at the minimum pay, that are below minimum pay. But I want to know what your thoughts are and how to proceed as we budget for where we're off, and try to help this not all at one time,
Right.
through a process.
Yeah, so typically it depends on your compensation philosophy. Do you want to match the market? Do you want to lead or lag the market? Where our recommendation is, we're working with cities and counties, is that you do your best to match market. So if you're 4% behind market or 5% behind market, that you do what you can do from a budget perspective to get to market, so that you lessen the chances of losing folks to the competition. So again, you have the variances as a way to guide you on what you need to do to get to the market.
Yeah, well, I'm saying that, but I'm saying, how do you get, if in our case, and I don't know whether it's a good idea or not, but if you start phasing, what would be your recommendation if you phase, if we made all of those employees that are below the minimum, we put money in there to raise them at least to the minimum, and then the second phase would be to raise all of those employees that are between the minimum and midpoint, and a lot of that would be based on years of experience.
Right.
To raise them, and then obviously between midpoint and max. So we start paying for years of experience as part of this phasing.
Right. So when you adopt in your particular situation, when you adopt the policy, as you're talking about, you're going to have some employees that are less than the minimum. So you definitely want to allocate resources to get them to the minimum by job title. So at least they're starting at the minimum, and then allocate resources to move employees up towards midpoint within the structure. So a lot of it can be handled, let's say maybe a 3, 4, 5% budget increase could take care of a lot of those decisions on moving employees to minimum and then towards midpoint. And if you can do it in the budget cycle, then that lessens your chances of losing people. If you can't afford it, then maybe it takes 2 budget cycles.
Okay.
Can I ask a Joe question?
Sure.
How many employees do we have that are below the minimum pay?
9.
Is that for all offices?
No.
The elected officials have?
I've done my own and the county judges, because I take care of the HR. There's 9 in where it says county judge's office, -5%. There's 9 employees that's under his direction.
What about the elected officials?
Their HR would need to look at that. They're whoever chief that, I believe jail has actually, but I don't know about the other elected officials.
You know how many you have, Jay?
He showed it to me the other day. Below the minimum on his study,
Uh-huh.
what was that number?
I don't recall exact number.
Wait,
I wonder
wait.
if it is.
I believe the minimum, probably 15. If I'm remembering the number right, it was like 1539, 1535. So
I think you're
all
right.
my starting officers are under the minimum.
Well, you're already proposing in your new budget for a $2 increase? Is that
I'm
correct?
proposing to be mid-range, yes.
Okay, so you're proposing, so you're taking care of it in your budget. No, that's really where we're trying to figure this one out.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
I think I know the answer to it, Mr. Johansson. Thank you all for being here. Your number for us is 6.7. I know what the surrounding counties, because of our budget, we're in the middle of our budget, getting ready to present next week. I know what the surrounding counties are around us. Was there in particular a county or two that hurt that number? 'Cause I know there's one county that's below us. How much did that hurt our number?
What's that? As far as one county compared?
Well, in your study, you've got
Right.
Scott County, Woodford County, Shelby County, other counties and that. And I know all of them but one county are above us. So my question is, how much did that one county that's below us hurt us?
Well, and that's why it was important to have more than one county in the study, because you sure wouldn't want to benchmark on someone that's below yours. So you also had one that I think is paying at $18 minimum to get started. And
Well, my point to that is that I know that one county that's below us is Shelby County, and they're going to be above us in this next budget line. So I just don't know how accurate our number is.
Yeah, well, I think yours is accurate, knowing, and we also had the discussion, we know the market's moving up. So I think it's a good reflection. The 6.7% behind market is a reflection of what it takes for you to move in an upward fashion to match the market.
Thank you, sir.
What would you, for the midpoint pay, would you base that on experience or tenure with the county? How would we know who should be at midpoint and who should be at maximum?
Okay, so again, depends on your understanding of a pay range and where people should be based on their ability to perform. Someone who's coming in with minimum or meeting the minimum requirements for the job comes in at the minimum, and then they progress towards market midpoint. And market midpoint usually means someone who's proficient in the job and able to accomplish the work without much direction. And then midpoint and above represents folks that are tenured, well tenured into the position. So I think the key to this one is just to make sure, one, that we're paying at the minimum of the new structure once it's adopted, and then moving people towards midpoint based on performance and time in position.
We very well probably have a lot that should at least be at midpoint pay or above that are not.
What did you just say? I'm sorry.
Another
I said-
opportunity to look at pay compression and how people are paid within the structure. This is setting structure and to make sure it's a competitive structure. and
Right.
A reflection on market.
Yeah, Judge, I just say that we probably have many that should be at minimum pay or above. Employees that have been here for
We
a long
have,
time.
I'm sorry, I still don't understand what you're saying. You're saying we have many employees that should be at minimum pay,
Midpoint
that you said, okay, minimum.
at midpoint.
At midpoint, okay.
or above.
And they're not, is what you're saying. We don't-
Probably, I said we very likely probably do. It's based on,
we do have people at midpoint or above, is what you're saying?
There's several employees, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm
That's
just-
okay. I don't
I'm
know how
not
to explain
comprehending
it.
how you're saying that. Okay, I'm sorry.
no, it's okay.
All right, so we have a lot, so did you get an overall look at where we were, Mr. Johansson, on numbers, or was that assigned to Betty on numbers of people that are below midpoint, people that are at max, people that are below the minimum, and that type of characterization?
Yeah, for your office, once you have that structure, you can see where people fall within the structure. But I think the key to this is to make sure that the structure is approved before you can make any decisions about pay within the structure.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Because that's really a moot point until the structure's been approved.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
And Judge, I wanted to bring up what Mr. Johann just said again. This is a structural component, as at least it was presented to me. We have some, and we all know it. Let's just speak out loud out of the way the code is run. There's some infirmities in hiring in county government relative to the max, mins, what you've got available, try to save money, et cetera. This doesn't address those things as I understand it. This addresses the structural component overall. And I hope that all of the public officials, as well as the members of fiscal court, they recognize that it's come in place year after year after year. We've got that variable form where you hire somebody in and then somebody ends up coming behind them and they make more money than the first person coming in. And this is just one component of that problem. That problem is not addressed by this study. It's not comprehensive to do that. We still have to figure that problem out. And have it every single day.
Can you respond to that, Mr. Johansson?
Yes, and so that's the premise of having a structure, because if you don't have a structure, then you
Correct.
don't have an understanding of what the issues are. So what this is all about was, one, building a structure, making sure that the structure is competitive with the market, allowing the other elected officials that manage their own structures to know how they're doing compared to the market. And then when you manage within that structure, that's a whole nother process.
Mr. Johansson, Mr. Sparks has brought up a point that we've all known and talked about for several years with the present structure, knowing that it's, as Mr. Sparks called it, infirmities, but we know that it doesn't work from the standpoint of hiring somebody at one level or a minimum level, and they come in and the next year somebody else comes in and makes more. So how do you recommend that we fix that problem within the structure, the pay structure of what you're presenting?
Yeah, so again, you have to have the structure in place and approved before you can manage within that structure. And that's where we are now, is at the point of making a recommendation within the structure. Once it's approved, then you go through the process of evaluating each employee's pay within the structure, and then moving their pay specifically based on performance for some organizations and based on time and position for other organizations that are geared towards time and position as opposed to performance.
Okay, and in between there, in between minimum and midpoint, let's start there. Could there be a percentage for per year performance, work duties or whatever that you could put as an evaluation piece in, or a compensation piece in?
Kind of short answer, yes, there is a way to do that. Some organizations have a tighter movement in an upward direction. Some have a little bit faster pace of moving through the structure based on budgets and the resources available. If you look at cities and counties, typically their pay structures last about 20 years. So come in day one, first year, and usually within about 7 to 10 years, you're at the midpoint. For counties, cities, probably about 10 years to get to midpoint based on what we call 80%, 100%, 100% midpoint, 80% is the minimum. If you use that analogy, then you're looking at a 2% relationship for each year time and position. So you would be at midpoint in 10 years.
So for an example, Mr. Johansson, it would be something like this, like 5 years or under would be the minimum pay, 5 to 10 years would be 25% of the midpoint, 15 to 20 years would be 25% of the max point.
And now probably start this way. So first year, or you're coming in new, that's at the 80 percentile. First year, 82%, 84%, 86%, 88, 90%. So if you're 5 years in position, 90% of midpoint, and then 6 years in position, 92%. And this is really strictly looking at, if you're looking at time of position and using a 2% value for each year in position. So
Okay,
do some pay compression and looking at the new person coming in making more than existing employees. We use some of that analysis to determine how to separate new people coming in with those that have been with the county for a period of time.
Another issue that we have seen, and I was moving towards but didn't say it. So in our present compensation study, we include the cost of living every year, and we, as part of it, to let it grow. But we're seeing that it is causing issues for one that's hired X amount one year, the next year the pay's gone up. So
if you're doing if you're doing a COLA every year to your pay structure, you're creating pay compression. We don't recommend moving the structure every year because that creates compression. So typically we recommend moving the structure every 2 to 3 years so that you give employees an opportunity to move into the structure further as opposed to having to chase the structure.
Mr. Johansson, could you indulge me in one little bit of words that you were using, words of art? What do you mean compression?
So I think you mentioned it earlier. Compression usually means that the structure is moving faster than the employee's pay within the structure. So if we're moving the minimum up each year, and we're not moving employees' pay either equally or a higher value, then new people coming in will butt up against someone who's been in position for 3 years.
Okay, thank you, sir. I just wanted to make sure I understood that word so we could all be on the same level as we discuss that.
Great question. Sorry for just throwing out the word.
Oh, no, I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page. Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Go ahead, Tammy.
This is to Betty Jo again. For the maximum pay, do we have employees currently that are at or above the maximum pay?
I'd have to get back with you on that. I don't have that answer.
If we, Mr. Johansson, if we do perhaps have employees who have maxed out the pay according to the schedule, do you have a suggestion on, does that need to be addressed, or do you continue to let that maximum grow?
That's a good question.
My thinking is that if you do right now, based on some of my reviews, I think you might have 1 or 2 employees that would be over the maximum, but counties and cities handle this in different ways. Sometimes they cap the pay until the range catches up with the person over the maximum. Sometimes what they'll do is pay just a stipend amount of value, not added to the person's base, but on a per year basis. If you had a 2% adjustment in pay, then you might give that out as a stipend pay and not add it to their base and let the range catch up with them. So it just depends how the organization wants to handle employees that are over the max.
That's a good question. All right. Well, I'll start in-house. Mr. Bonner, any of your staff have questions? Laura, Rich?
No, sir.
Jay?
I'm good, sir.
Okay. Well, and I'll come back to Betty and Tamara in a second, but Mr. Coroner Harrod, Will, you have any questions before we move on, adjourn?
No, sir.
Okay. Squire Sebastian?
Thank you, Judge. I know I had asked earlier in the meeting for some materials, and I think sounded like Squire Muller asked a question in regard to the position descriptions to see maybe where they started and what is being proposed now. Because really all we have seen, or all I have seen, I can only speak for myself, is this 12-page PowerPoint. I haven't seen any of the working materials that got us to this. And usually a PowerPoint's just an overview. It doesn't give you any detail. So I'd really like to see as much detail on this as possible, because I think there's a lot of ground that's been covered, and it's important to have an understanding of that. So I don't know who that question gets directed at, whether that's Mr. Johansson or whether that's someone else. So whoever's appropriate to answer, please. Thank you.
Okay, let's be more specific, Squire Sebastian. I'm sorry you're coughing at this time. Don't feel well, but what exactly are you asking for again? You're asking for the page that elected officials. We can't send you something unless we're sure of what you're asking for. I think Squire Muller is asking for job descriptions. You want 108 job descriptions?
Judge, I'll go ahead and go. It sounds like Squire Sebastian's having a little issue. Yes, I would love to see the individual job descriptions, you know, how we got there. I believe there were some worksheets for the elected officials. I think we need to have all the information, because ultimately, you know, we're the fiscal court that's approving all the budgets. So any of the information that was part of this study, I would like to have. Thank you. And again, Mr. Johansson and Betty Jo and everybody, thank you for all your hard work on this. Thank you.
Well, instead of cutting down 8,000 trees because there's 108 job descriptions that have to be sent out. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure what's the best way to get you.
Judge, email's great. If they a PDF or anything, if anything can be emailed, I'm all about it.
We'll do the best we can to get all of that sent out to you as soon as possible. Okay, Mr. Johansson, can you see that we get those job descriptions that you read down? Thank you. And then also we need the elected officials, the information on the elected officials, employees.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
And who does he send that to, Tamara?
He sent it to Betty Jo.
All right. Okay. Now, Squires, let's make this perfectly clear, because you're asking for this. I don't want to get in on Wednesday and you all say, well, we don't have enough information. So is there any more information that you think you might need for our meeting on Wednesday as part? You've asked for two things and we've got that down. Any more information that you think you need?
Judge, I'll speak to that. Not having seen information, I don't know what I may ask between now and then. I mean, I've seen a PowerPoint, which, as we all know, a PowerPoint is just an overview. It doesn't give any detail at all. So I think the critical point is getting some of the detail we've asked for today, or getting all the detail we've asked for today, at least for me. So that any questions I ask on Wednesday will be more pertinent and driven by direct access to information rather than just this overview PowerPoint. Thank you.
Okay.
So I will, are you clear based on what details she wants?
I still don't know.
Well,
Judge,
we don't know.
could I ask Mr. Johansson or Ms. Rednauer? One of the documents that I received was a Franklin County, Kentucky summary of market pay comparison. It's just one page. That might be helpful to review as to each department, et cetera, because it's got the breakdown with Scott County, Shelby County, the whole regional area that they took a look at, that breaks it down pretty tight.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I asked for at the very beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
So I'm sure whoever's taking notes in there, I asked several questions throughout the meeting. I'm sure you've got that. Thank you.
Squire Sebastian, if you'd like to clarify to make sure none of those were missed, you can go ahead and do that for us, please.
Would it be okay if I just speak directly to the HR director after
She's
this?
right here. Okay.
Well,
So-
okay,
so I-
yeah, if you please do whatever you think I think we've got it, Betty.
Yeah, I believe what with the job descriptions is, I have to get with Johansson Group. I don't know if we can get those done. I'm not for sure where he is on those, but I believe what Sarah's asking.
Joe, we have them ready. I'll get them in a file
Okay,
today.
well, I've got to send you the rest of them too, so those will have to be updated. I believe what they were asking for is the job descriptions on each position. To the market analysis is what Rick was talking about with the Shelby County, like the clerk's office, everything they compare to and their rates. That's the two things I've got so far.
That's
Is
what
that
she asked for.
right?
That's all this has been asked for so far. That's all. Squire Muller wants the job descriptions. Squire Sebastian wants the elected officials
Right.
summary, and then when they both want the job descriptions. So that's from all I understand. Squire Muller.
Thank you, Judge. I'm just wondering if we would be able to have another committee meeting about this. It seems like everybody on the call has asked really good questions. But it seems like everyone still needs some answers. So my
We are going
recommendation.
to have another meet. We're going to have a fiscal court meeting on the 30th. Now, Squire Sebastian couldn't meet until after that.
Well, I mean, is there a reason that we can't push it to our next fiscal court meeting is my question, and have another committee meeting prior? I mean, this is a huge thing to.
I just told you, Squire Sebastian said she can't meet in it until after the fiscal court meeting.
Well, that's what I'm saying, Judge. Is there a reason we can't move this item to the next following fiscal court meeting, not the 30th?
It's because we have to get our budget in. We have to have our budget approved by the end of April, a preliminary approved by the end of April. So our next meeting is the 22nd, and Susan's got to have time to get all the figures in. And so once we get it adopted, then we have to it's going to take a while to get to go through and figure out everything. So we don't really have time to do that, Squire Muller.
Okay.
Don't put a lot of pressure on the staff. I mean, all we're asking for you to do is approve the framework. And then the compensation committee and all of us can work after that point and come up with the plan to implement it.
Do you want to hear from the department heads?
Yeah.
And see how they feel.
Yeah, department heads, okay.
And their job, how they formulated the job descriptions to make sure all the employees review their own.
All right. I think one of the things that I'm not sure that the Squire Muller he's wanting to know about the updated job descriptions. The department heads, did you have an opportunity to sit down with Mr. Johansson, and did you update the job descriptions? I'll start with John Mitchell.
Oh.
Yes, we did meet with him and updated a few of our job descriptions. I don't think there was a big change in many of them, but the ones that needed to be looked at, we did, and we kind of created, I think, 2 or 3 more that, to help my ladder work better on my end, to create some difference in there. I mean, that's what we were looking for, and I think it's going to work out for us the way we came up with it.
Okay. Brian Brewer, did you all have an opportunity, Chief Brewer?
Yes, Judge. We did meet with Mr. Johansson, and every member of the department was given a copy of their job description for the study. They made comments and notes, and then we compiled all that information together to make any necessary adjustments to those job descriptions.
Okay. Robert Hewitt?
Yes, sir. I did have an opportunity to meet with Mr. Johansson, and I followed the exact same process as the fire chief.
Okay. And Charlie Lewis?
Yes, we met, and we did the same process as the fire chief. All my guys reviewed their job descriptions, and then we met with Mr. Johansson, and I would also like to say thank you for including the golf manager's position. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay. You're not excited about that, are you, Charlie?
Yes, yes, very much so. That's, we had that years ago, and we've been without it for quite some time now, and would really like to have that back. So I appreciate that.
Okay. Okay. Jeremy, you on there? Jeremy Colston?
Yes, sir. We reviewed ours, and my guys looked at them, and we turned them in. There wasn't much changes to mine.
What Tambra, what about ours?
Yes, so I met with our employees. We did not have a lot of changes either, just did some cleanup work. So each one of our employees here under me were also included.
Okay. Spar Muller?
Thank you, Judge. Will Mr. Johansson be at our fiscal court meeting to answer any questions from the other members of the court or elected officials?
Yes, he's doing it.
Yes.
He's doing basically the same presentation, and
Okay.
these same questions will come up from court members on Wednesday.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, anything else? Anybody else have questions? Anybody else? All right, I think we have a direction. I think we know where to go. Mr. Johansson, we're gonna see you when on? Wednesday at 3. Wednesday, I believe that's the 29th.
Right. I've got it on my calendar. Thank you, County Judge.
Okay, thank you, elected officials. If you want to be on and hear that, the presentation again and other questions from the court.
Wednesday, the 30th.
I'm sorry, Wednesday, the 30th, I apologize. Wednesday, the 30th at 3 o'clock. All right, Will Harrod.
Judge, I may have missed it, but we also did have the opportunity to meet with Mr. Johansson. If I may address that, we had to really go back and look at our job descriptions. There was a lot of misunderstanding about what our day-to-days were. So all of ours have been updated a couple of times, and there's just some misconception about our agency, but I think we're in a better place now. So just wanted to add that note.
That's great. Thank you for saying that, because that's what this is all about, is updating, being the real world, what your real jobs are. So thanks, Will, for saying that. Okay, Mr. Johansson, thank you for being on today. We appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you on Wednesday at 3 o'clock next week, and we'll move from there, okay?
Yep. Thank you, County Judge. Pleasure to work with y'all.
Is everybody okay to adjourn? Muller and Sebastian okay to adjourn? Okay. We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and this has been a great meeting, discussion of our compensation plan that we'll be talking about again on Wednesday. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
Squire, I hope you feel